Every year there's a must-buy for Valentine's Day, and this year was a new box of chocolates. Valentine's Day draws out many different crowds, but every time it's the same. You get the forever alone people that fervently complain about being alone on the holiday, which ironically is a horribly unattractive trait, thus reinforcing that they will be alone for the holiday. You get the negative Nancys who are mad at the holiday for being so couple-enforced, seemingly ignoring the fact that you can just spend time with a close friend or family. And don't get me started on the Valentine's Day is a hallmark holiday people that seem to think the commercialization automatically erases any sense of sincerity that can be achieved from the day. This is in contrast to the die-hard fanatics that want to go hard on everything for the holiday. And though I love her to pieces, sadly Megan, the girl I'm dating, falls into this category. Though we've both grown up since our younger puppy love days, where every day had to be special, she still loves to be spoiled on Valentine's Day. So, when a local advertisement made its rounds that this year's must-have was Hearto chocolates, the most cliché-looking Valentine's chocolate bundle I'd ever seen, Megan had to have them. They were advertised to be the latest in chocolate innovation. The fillings were these small brown balls of flavour, touted to be the new truffle, but much more affordable. All the details were heavily pushed in all the local ads and posters plastered across our town. She more than hinted that this was what she wanted. And you know what? I was actually ecstatic about it. To me, chocolate was much more affordable than some limited edition jewellery that'll only be worn for a day, or a huge, overpriced bear that would very quickly merge into the pile of plushies she kept. Chocolate was usually seen as a cop-out gift, so the fact that she asked for it was a godsend to me. A sentiment that some of my other friends thought too. I happily promised to get her a box and told her we'd have a fun day together. The only problem was, my friends and I weren't the only ones to pick up on this great deal, and the queues ran around the block in most of the stores that stocked the chocolates. Every man and dog was getting them as an easy, affordable, yet thoughtful gift this year, so most stores immediately ran out of stock. Whoever ran this company's marketing department was damn good at their jobs. I ended up having to do a bit of research to try snag a box. It turned out the company behind these chocolates were a local pop-up company that seemingly opened overnight. This was their debut product, and timed it perfectly to cash in on Valentine's Day. Their PR was perfect. They created a perceived value similar to what made Apple such an appealing company. The status of the item had a feeling of exclusivity on top of the quality of the item itself. In the end of the day, it was just chocolate, just like an iPhone is just a phone. But the inherent notion of owning it held status value and bragging rights. Sadly, because they were just situated in our town, it meant I couldn't just skip over to the city and find a heavily stocked store. So my friends and I hopped in my car and we did the rounds to all the stores that received stock. We bounced around store to store, asking staff the question that must have burned their ears all week. We'd occasionally look out and find a store with one left. Because I was the driver, I let them have first dibs. Or rather, they twisted my arm into that deal. I guess they figured that if I got a box, I'd be less inclined to drive them around, which was true, and I was their only ride. Eventually, everyone had one, except me. I dropped them all home, the irony being that they no longer wanted to stick around since they already had a box, and left me alone to search for one myself. I wasn't mad since we did this kind of stuff to each other all the time. I carried on bouncing around town, confident I could snag a last-minute batch. However, the later things dragged on, the more I realized it wasn't going to happen. My confidence got the better of me, and it bit me in the ass. I was devastated, because I knew she'd be devastated. It didn't help that, despite the company's best attempts to create enough stock for demand, they were still a new company, so stock was awfully limited. I tried calling the company and asking if they stocked any stores in other towns. I was ready to do a long run. However, they simply told me this run was exclusive to our town. I presumed they were using their home turf as a testing ground. Valentine's Day came, and I had to face the music. I gently let Megan know the truth, that I simply couldn't get the chocolates in time, though not from lack of trying. Her response took me by surprise. She wasn't mad or upset, though I optimistically hoped for that. But on top of that, she was happy. She had heard the effort I went through and was happy at the gesture more than the product. I was ecstatic. This motivated me to make the day I had planned even more special, and we ended up having a great time. While we were having a nice dinner date, I checked my messages. On top of the group chat that often flared with messages, I got a private message from one of the friends I drove around. He told me he was the one who tipped off Megan about her escapades, and he and his girlfriend had a great idea. They would save half the box for me to give to Megan the day after. I politely asked them if they were sure, and he simply told me his girlfriend wanted it out of curiosity and was happy with just trying some. So, with that in mind, I carried on with my date and sneakily never told Megan, ready to surprise her. The morning after, Megan was more than happy. We had hit a high point in our relationship, which she admitted to me. This made me feel even more excited that I had a chance to add more to this emotional fire we were stoking. She left for work, and I timed it so my friend would drop off the box without Megan's knowledge. He came quickly and handed them to me, neatly rewrapped to make it more presentable. I asked him where his girlfriend was, and he told me she wasn't feeling too well. Knowing he'd be alone and wanting to make up for the favor, I asked if he wanted to hang out. He told me he was starting to come down with something as well, and opted to leave. I shot him a quip that I'd make up for this favor in the future, which he gave a grin and left. I hid them in plain sight and played around for the rest of the day, waiting for Megan to get off. When she eventually did come home, a few hours later than she should have, she was exhausted. She was in a rut, saying over and over that she felt like she had to work 10 people's jobs. Apparently, there were a lot of no-shows that day, since a lot of people called in sick. There were rumours something was going around, but she just chalked it up to post-Valentine's Day hangovers. Her mood flipped when she saw it. I straight away wanted to tell her the truth, so I could explain why I never gave her the chocolates to her on Valentine's Day, and why the box was half empty. But before I could even get a word out, she screamed in disgust. She slammed it shut and put it back down in haste. This took me back. I didn't think it was that bad to have a hand-me-down. She scowled in anger towards me, shooting me with an accusatory look. I asked her what was wrong. Confusion plastered across my face. When she saw me confused, her anger devolved to a matching level of confusion. All she told me was to look inside, but to be careful. I slowly peeked inside and immediately slammed it shut. Some of the chocolates had small blemishes on top, and from each one were tiny brown beads gently wriggling themselves free from their cage. The easier ones to see were the chocolate shells that were cracked and had freed their wriggling prisoners. I didn't look for long, but that was enough to see they were small, chocolate-coloured little worms that were hidden within each bite-sized piece of chocolate. I didn't look for long, but that was enough to see they were small, chocolate-coloured little worms that were hidden within each bite-sized piece of chocolate. They looked infantile in nature. I was mortified. I confirmed what I saw, giving detail without thinking, causing Megan to run to the bathroom, a heaving sound accompanying her. I grabbed the nearest roll of tape and took to wrapping the box 1,000 times over. While mindlessly trying to secure the box, a thought came to my head, and I flicked on the TV. On every local channel, there were news reports doing big exposés on the Heart of Chocolate product and its company. There were calls of a town-wide emergency, and all authorities were on high alert. Though they were also reporting that the emergency services were woefully understaffed for the pandemic due to a large number of workers were also infected by the chocolates. When Megan returned, we sat there and watched everything unfold. The evening started with talks of quarantine and riots, and things progressed through the night to the borders of our town being shut off and a form of martial law trying to keep the peace. All the while, I was keeping an eye on social media. I saw updates that my friends fell victim to the illness, a lot of them either taken to the hospital or complaining at how long the emergency services were taking to get to them. It was pandemonium. Everyone was terrified for their safety. I held Megan close, but in my head, I didn't know if it was for her comfort or mine. The last thing we saw on TV was a shot of an interviewer in an ER room. He was showing the aftermath of the effects of the chocolate, doing a deep dive on the symptoms people were feeling. Phrases like intense stomach pains, nausea, uncontrollable vomiting, headaches scrolled past the screen. There were even weirder symptoms that were reported. Psychological ones, like hearing a constant wriggling, or even hearing strange voices. One person even stated it was the unmistakable voice of a deceased loved one. No one knew what to make of any of it. People were becoming delusional. And this was only if the victim could talk. Some were falling into a comatose state, barely responding to any stimulus. Suddenly, there was a scream from down the hall, followed by the cameraman letting out an audible gasp. This left the anchor confused, a look of annoyance at the unprofessional disruption from what should have been a silent cameraman. But that was because the cameraman could see what was coming, whereas the news anchor could not. Behind the anchor was a figure, slowly stumbling towards him. His neck was disturbingly bent back, his mouth open at an inhuman girth. From his throat was a large, wriggling mass, which when closer looked like the tip of a large worm. It looked extremely uncomfortable. However, the figure didn't seem bothered. The way he moved, it looked like he wasn't in any sort of control, acting like he was moving on some sort of unconscious instinct. I wasn't even sure if he could breathe. Before the anchor had the initiative to turn around, it was too late. The figure grabbed the anchor's hair with an ungodly strength and yanked his head back, forcing his mouth open. Before he could let out any scream, the writhing head of the worm bent down and vomited a mass of small, brown dots. Megan looked away, not knowing what was going on. But my mind instantly made the connection. The dots were reminiscent to the egg-like dots that were baked into the chocolates, the mystery unraveling far too late for me to do anything about. The shot cut after the camera swung back, indicating the cameraman's upper body was also yanked back. This left the screen on a high-pitched whine, and the visuals nothing but a TV coloured test screen. No more broadcasts were shown after that. I told Megan to stay put and rushed into the garage to grab any and all hardware supplies I could carry. I boarded up all the windows and doors on the lower floor, just about having enough wood and nails to do so. I made sure we turned off all the lights and sealed the windows with fabric and tape. I emphasized many times over for her to never make a sound and to keep all lights off, no matter what. She was terrified, but compliant, taking my grave tone seriously. She thought of me as acting out of bravery, but I never let on that it was actually fueled by fear and also a hidden motivation. In the brief moment I looked out the garage window, I saw a glimpse of what was going on outside. I saw the fires of panic, people rushing around in fear. I saw people lying on the ground, passed out. Standing above them were figures with their heads impossibly snapped back, a writhing brown point wriggling in success. After seeing what happened to the anchor, it wasn't hard to figure out what happened to the unconscious people. My goal was to never let us see what was going on outside, and to keep whatever was outside from seeing us. I hear the tearing of helicopters above and the chatter of military-sounding radios in the street. Occasionally, there's the clatter of gunfire. But from the screams, I have no idea who's winning. All we can do is wait.